And should we mute ourselves or will you mute us?
Well, at the moment, you can say hello to people. Like I see Alice just joined. Hey, Alice. Hey, Bill. Good to see you, Bill.
Hi, Alice. Oh,
We can't hear you, but you can chat in. You can type in. You can type a message if you want to.
How are you, honey? Good.
Hey, Amanda. Good to see you today. Hey, Lori and Terry. Hey, Christina. Hey, Laura. Welcome.
and there's Mr. Dick Halverson. Thank you for joining, Dick.
Wow.
Hey. He's
Hey
actually
there.
using the computer this time. Normally he calls in on the phone. This time he's on the computer.
He's getting sophisticated. And we have Laura joining us.
Hey, John Rice. Hey, good to see you again. Hey, Arnold. Arnie, good to see you.
Oh, nice to see Arnie.
Ah,
Lori Massey is on with us.
Hi, Lori.
Lori. Hi, Lori.
right. Christina, are we live on Facebook Live yet?
We sure are. And I'm just sharing it right now.
Go ahead and get the screens up. So panelists, if you want to mute yourself while you're not speaking, then that'll just keep the sound down. And get started here. Excuse me. Debbie, can you see the slides full size? Okay.
Yes, I can.
Right. Well, welcome everyone to the Loving Them Forward Resources for Family, Caregivers, and Seniors, our May meeting. I'm Benjamin, Director of People and Culture for Kelch Communities. Happy to be your host today. Every meeting we like to start with our mission statement, and it is: Loving Them Forward is a community of people that have been taking care of family members and seniors through life transitions, personally and professionally. We are committed to improving the well-being of caregivers in our community by providing free support, education, and resources while they care for seniors and loved ones. Family caregivers and seniors don't have to do it all alone. And with that, I would like to introduce Christina, who will be sharing with us today just a few of her own thoughts from some really personal experiences that she has had recently. Go take it away, Christina.
Hi, everybody. Christina Keys, co-founder and president of Loving Them Forward. Wanted to say thank you, first of all, Benjamin, for helping us out today, and to our presenters. Today, we're going to be talking about advanced care planning, wills, power of attorneys. And one of the things that made me think this is really important, it's always really important, but especially at this time during COVID, I had a situation recently where a very close loved one, my roommate, recently had a stroke, and he had to go into the hospital, and he wasn't able to advocate for himself. He didn't have a power of attorney. And so we had to quickly draw up power of attorney papers, wills, and everything, because we didn't know what was going to happen with him, because I was not able to be in the hospital because of COVID protocols. I had to advocate for him on the outside. And as you know, it's very hard to do that if you don't have a power of attorney for somebody. So we wanted to put together a quick training meeting where we could talk with some of the professionals, Miss Heather Norton and also Miss Linda Milton, to tell you a little bit about how important it is to have those end-of-life procedures and the documentation in order, and how to do it so it'll help you not only now during COVID, but also later. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, is it me? Am I on?
You sure?
You're on.
Okay. All right. I haven't updated my picture in a while. I can say I need to change that. So if you'll advance the next slide, Ben. My name is Heather Norton, and I am an estate planning attorney here in Vancouver. My practice is a little different from most attorneys because I don't have a traditional brick and mortar office that people come to visit me. So I meet with my clients via phone, web conference, and for my Clark County clients, since I do have clients all over the state of Washington, I meet with my Clark County clients mostly in their home, which I really love, especially for my senior clients, just because a lot of them have mobility issues and they're not able to just schlep across town to go meet with an attorney. So it allows me to go to my clients, and I like it because it gives my clients the ability to do their estate planning in the comfort of their own home, which really kind of takes away some of the overwhelming nature of doing your estate planning. By having a virtual business model and by avoiding the overhead expense of a brick and mortar office, I'm able to save on costs, and I pass those cost savings on to my clients in the form of lower fees. So that's basically my practice and how I work. Today, I'm going to be talking, if you could advance to the next slide, Ben. Today, I'm going to be talking about the estate planning documents that every adult needs and how to get them during COVID-19. I really like just laying out all of the documents that people need. One of the reasons I like doing that is because I've found that for a lot of folks, thinking about doing your estate planning can be just a lot to take in. It can be very overwhelming. And I think that by laying out all of the documents, it kind of helps simplify the process. So we're going to break them out, talk about the documents that you need and what they do. Now, before I start talking about the documents, I really like to share a story. If you'll click to the next slide, Ben. I like to share a story called My Life as a Guardianship Attorney. And the reason I like to share this story is because it really gives context to the documents that we're going to be talking about. So years ago, when I ventured into this practice area of estate planning, I also was in another planning area called guardianship. So if you don't know a whole lot about guardianship, guardianship is basically the process of getting a court, a judge, to appoint a surrogate decision maker for an adult who does not have the ability to make choices for themselves any longer. And so something would happen very regularly in my practice, and that is my phone would ring and it would be a very distraught person on the other end. Ben, if you'll advance to the next slide. This is our distraught person. There we go. A lot of times it was not uncommon for these people to be very stressed out. Often they would be crying. And the fact scenarios were always a little different, but mostly the same. It was usually something like, my mom just had a stroke, my dad just had a brain aneurysm, my aunt or uncle was just in a terrible car accident, they're in the hospital, in a coma, or they're not responsive, or they're not able to take care of their life right now, and we're doing everything that we can to help them, but we can't XYZ. And they would list some barrier or some obstacle that they had run into that was preventing them from moving forward to help this person. The obstacles were usually something like, we need to access money in their 401k to help pay for care, but we can't get to the money. We need to pay their bills, but we can't access the bank account. We need to get into their apartment, but the landlord won't let us because that's against the law. We are afraid they're going to be foreclosed on. And we're pooling our assets to pay the mortgage, but, and so it was always some barrier that they had reached that they could not surmount. So my question for them, my first question was always the same. It was always, okay, did mom or dad or aunt or uncle ever execute any advanced planning document that would allow someone to stand in their shoes and do what needs to be done? And of course, the answer was always no. So my response was, okay, there's a solution that will fix it, and it's called guardianship. We will petition the court to appoint a guardian for your loved one, and then the guardian will have the legal tools to do what needs to be done. I can't remember what my next slide is, but I think it's related. Ben, will you advance it to the next slide? Yeah, so a guardianship, really, when you are in that situation, A guardianship is the only way to give your loved ones the authority that they need to act on your behalf during your incapacity if you don't have advanced planning documents in place. So that's all great, right? But what I hated having to do was tell them what comes next. And you can click next, Benjamin. The thing that I hated is telling them that this comes with a problem, and that is, next, the cost and the time of a guardianship, okay? So in Clark County, best case scenario, a guardianship, well, and this will come generally, if you have the funds, it will come from the incapacitated adult's funds, okay? So the incapacitated adult then their money has to pay for this guardianship proceeding that ends up in court. And that can cost, like, at a starting place, several $1,000s at a minimum. And then the other thing, which I think is just as bad, is that it takes a long time. So best case scenario in Clark County, we're looking at about 3 months for a guardianship to be put in place. And so I always just felt really bad that, you know, I could fix the problem, but these poor family members had to go through a really, really difficult time as they just kind of hung on and did the best that they could until we could get a guardianship in place. I really loved being at the end of a guardianship when we got help for the vulnerable person, but every time I just couldn't help but feel really sad for the family because they had gone through what was really unnecessary trauma, because if advanced documents had been in place, they could have avoided the guardianship in the first place. So, and it didn't take me long after that to just completely transition my practice to doing just completely 100% estate planning. I just felt like my time was better spent helping people be preventive. So next slide, Benjamin. Let's talk about, okay, so this slide basically just summarizes. A lot of people think when they think about doing estate planning, they think, I just need to get my will. And that's true. You do need to get a will. In fact, I call the will the backbone of an estate plan. But, you know, based on my life as a guardianship attorney, you can see that doing your estate planning means so much more than planning for your death and getting a will in place. It means planning in advance for your death and potential incapacity. So go ahead, next slide, Benjamin. Let's talk about the 8 estate planning documents that every adult needs. Now, I'll just pause here and say, if you do not have minor children, you'll only need 7, because one of the documents is for minor children. If you listen to folks like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman or any other presentations, you may have at some point or may at some point hear something like you need 4 estate planning documents or you need 5 estate planning documents. And here's why can sometimes be a discrepancy in the numbers. Some of these documents that we're going to talk about can be combined or folded into each other. And so I think there's a lot of benefit in just listing all of them. And then I will tell you what documents are sometimes combined within the same document and why, okay? So the first document is a will. Sometimes a will is supplemented by a trust. We're not going to spend time today talking about the difference between a will or a trust. In a nutshell, I just want to say, and most of us know, the purpose of a will is to distribute your property when you die. A trust basically does the same thing. It just does it in a slightly different way. And maybe later we can do another presentation about the difference between a will and a trust. But for now, that's all we're going to focus on, okay? A will. Purpose of a will is to distribute your property when you die. Next slide, Ben. The next document you need is a disposition of remains document. This is a document where you appoint a person to be in charge of your body after you pass away. You also list what you want to happen with your body when you die, whether you want to be cremated or whether you want to be buried or perhaps donate your body to science. Here's an interesting story. I don't do litigation in my practice, but a friend of mine does, and she actually ended up representing Some members of a family, mom passed away unexpectedly. She had never had a conversation with family members about this. She did not have a disposition of remains document in place. Family was completely divided about whether she should be cremated versus buried. And as a result, the morgue could not release her body. And the family literally was in litigation for months while they were disputing what should happen to mom's remains. So that's the purpose of a disposition of remains document. Now, this is an example of a document that is often folded into a will. So sometimes you'll see a disposition of remains document as a standalone document, and sometimes you'll see it as part of a will, okay? Next document, next slide. This is a general durable power of attorney document, and you will hear this document referred to in many different ways. Sometimes it's called a POA. Sometimes it's called a durable POA. Sometimes it's called a general POA. Sometimes it's called a POA for finances. The reason is the purpose of this document is to name an agent who will basically stand in your shoes and do things that are mostly financially related, okay? Access your bank account, pay your bills, deal with brokerage accounts and retirement accounts, enter into contracts for you, or deal with contracts that you've already entered into. That's the purpose of a general durable power of attorney. Now, the important word in this document is durable. Some power of attorney documents are limited in nature. That means they have a limited scope, meaning there are only certain things that your agent can do under that power of attorney document. Or they're limited in time, meaning they expire at a certain time. A durable power of attorney, it's actually important to have that word and actually some specific language in your durable power of attorney that makes the power durable, meaning it does not expire if you become incapacitated. Because remember, this is the whole reason we're executing this document, is so that if you become incapacitated, people will have the authority to do you while you're incapacitated. There are a handful, the next three, I'm just gonna, just advance just this one. Well, okay, that's fine. That's great then, thank you. The next three documents are healthcare related. So you actually need 3 healthcare documents, and sometimes one or more of these can be folded into each other, but I'm breaking them out separately because I think it's important to know what each of these documents does. A healthcare power of attorney is very similar to a general durable power of attorney that we just talked about. But instead of appointing an agent to be able to do financial things for you, the gist of this document is you're appointing an agent that can make healthcare choices for you. That's the purpose of this document. Normally in this document is governed by state statute, and normally it doesn't go into a specific detail. It generally just gives your agent broad authority to make healthcare choices for you. Now, the next document is a HIPAA authorization. If you're familiar with HIPAA, it stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And this is basically the law that prohibits doctors from sharing your confidential healthcare information with anyone. So you can see how if you are going to execute a healthcare power of attorney document and name an agent to make healthcare choices for you, you also need to give doctors your permission to share your healthcare information with those people, okay? So a healthcare power of attorney document and a HIPAA authorization often go hand in hand. And it's not uncommon for a HIPAA authorization to be folded into a healthcare power of attorney. But sometimes you can have a healthcare authorization that's just a standalone document. The next document is the third of your 3 healthcare documents, and it goes by a couple of different names depending on where you live. The state of Washington calls it an advance directive. Other states call it a living will. So those two terms, advance directive and living will, are used interchangeably. The purpose of this document is basically for you to talk about what you want your healthcare to look like at the end of your life. This is a very narrowly tailored document. It's only used in a couple of very narrow situations. Number one, if you are in a permanent vegetative state, okay, or in other words, a permanent coma. We are not bringing you back from that coma. The other time this document is used is if you have been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And basically, that illness has progressed to the point where you are actively dying, and you cannot speak. Okay, we need to know what things do you want us to do or not do. This is the document that usually speaks to I do or I do not want artificial nutrition or hydration. I do or I do not want CPR, antibiotics, things like that. Okay, now a couple questions that I sometimes get about advance directives are, is this the same thing as a POLST? Now, you may have heard of a POLST, P-O-L-S-T. It stands for Physician's Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment. And it's very similar to a POLST. A POLST is basically like, it's an agreement between you and your doctor. A POLST is generally a document that is initiated by your doctor. A POLST is usually used for people who are very frail, often used for the elderly, often used for people who have a very serious health condition. And it's my understanding that a rule of thumb for doctors is they will initiate a POLST with a patient if they would not be surprised if that person were to die within the next year. A POLST is a brightly colored piece of paper that is often hung like in a very visible place, usually the refrigerator, so that emergency providers can find that when they go to your residence, and they can find that readily accessible, and they can know what your end of life wishes are. So just know that when it comes to an advance directive and a POLST, there is overlap. They are two different documents. A POLST is basically between you and your doctor. An advance directive is basically, it's a legal document governed by the state of Washington. And it's basically you just saying in advance, I may not be sick now, but in the event I am in one of these limited circumstances and decisions need to be made for me, this is what I would like to happen. Okay. While we're on the topic of advance directives, I would just like to mention real quick a document that has become more and more popular just in the last 5 years, and it's called a dementia directive. As of right now, it's technically not a legal document per se. There's no statute that governs dementia directives, but it essentially is an advance directive that allows you to speak to what kind of care you want if you are living with dementia. And you can actually just do a Google search, and you can find a number of dementia directives online that you can fill out. And I really recommend that people fill these out like now, because it's once you're diagnosed with dementia, it just becomes harder and harder to complete these forms. All right, next document is a digital diary. And I'll say this is actually not a legal document, but it's really critical to have as part of your estate plan. It literally is just a list of usernames and passwords that you use to unlock your phone, unlock your computer, unlock your tablet, and a list of passwords to access accounts that you may have in the cloud. Bank accounts, brokerage accounts, photo storage vaults, things like that. Here's the thing, years ago, before the internet, if someone became incapacitated or they died, their agent or personal representative would just wait for 3 or 4 weeks for the mail to come in. And in a matter of weeks, those people, they would have a pretty accurate paper trail of what bills you owed and where your money was. But since so many people are doing their document or doing cloud accounting online, there is no paper trail to follow. And so what I've noticed is that even though this is not a legal document, this becomes a really critical piece to helping your loved ones pick up the pieces after you die or help you when you are incapacitated just by having this record. My best advice, I mean, like, it really doesn't have to be fancy. My best advice is just keep a spreadsheet on your computer or keep a piece of paper by your keyboard for like 4 to 6 weeks. And every time you use an account, just jot down the username and password, and you'll get to a point where you realize, yep, that's pretty current. And then just put it with your other estate planning documents and then get it out probably once a year, maybe at your birthday or, you know, Christmas or January 1st, whatever, and just update that. Okay, Benjamin, next slide. The last document that we have is actually not applicable to everybody. This is a guardianship designation for minor children. So if you have kids at home under the age of 18, I think this is probably one of the most compelling reasons to do your estate planning. This is where you talk about who you want to care for your children if you die. Now, this is a great example of a document that often is folded into another document. This Washington State actually requires that a guardianship designation for minor children be housed within a will or within a general durable power of attorney. Some other states will allow you to have a standalone guardianship designation document, but Washington requires that that be either in a will or a general durable POA. Let's do our next slide. This is how to do your estate planning during COVID-19. Here's how this works. Estate planning really involves 3 steps. Why don't you click the button 3 times, Benjamin, and let's look at these 3 steps. So number 1, you basically have your initial planning meeting with an attorney. This is where you're going to be chatting with your attorney about your needs. The attorney will look at your assets and figure out kind of how everything needs to work together, any special things that need to be taken into consideration. And you, with your attorney, are going to figure out, what is my estate plan really going to look like? And the attorney figures out, okay, how are we going to draft these documents so they accomplish the goals and objectives of the client? Step number 2 is the drafting of the documents. And then step number 3 is the signing or the execution of the documents with witnesses. Now, when it comes to doing estate planning during COVID-19, it's really number 1 and number 3 that you need to ask questions about. When you're going to be working with an attorney during COVID-19 on your estate planning documents, the first question you need to ask is, okay, how are we going to be meeting? Most estate planning attorneys I know have transitioned, so they are meeting with their clients via phone and via web conference. Sometimes that doesn't really work well for seniors, especially seniors who are uncomfortable with technology or maybe have difficulty hearing. I personally do make in-home meetings to my clients, so that is a question that you need to be asking the attorney that you're working with, okay? Number 2, you don't really need to worry about. Obviously, the attorney's just going to take care of drafting the documents, you know, wherever they're working. I will say when it comes to number 3, signing and executing the documents with witnesses, this is the number 1 thing that has become a problem for estate planning attorneys across the board. And here's why. There are several reasons. The first reason is that state law requires that some of these documents, particularly your will, they have to be witnessed by at least 2 witnesses. And you can't do that remotely. You can't do that via FaceTime. The law requires that witnesses be physically present with the testator as the testator is signing the will. So that has made things really tricky for us as attorneys. Now, some of these documents need to be notarized. The governor has allowed us to do what are called remote online notarizations, but that has created some problems as well, because there is kind of a gray area when it comes to power of attorney documents and wills. Most of the attorneys that I'm talking to feel that we cannot use the remote online notarization process to notarize wills and power of attorney documents. So here's what you need to do if you're working with an attorney on your estate planning documents. Obviously, you need to ask them about, number one, how do you meet with your clients? And then you need to ask them, when it comes to signing, how are you handling that? I don't know how a lot of other attorneys are managing this, but I'll tell you what my approach has been. I've done a number of things. For my assisted living clients, I have basically traveled to their facility, and I basically have stood out, because I'm sure you know, assisted living facilities in the state of Washington are not allowing anyone in at this point. So I will travel to their assisted living facility, and I arrange with the facility for me to stand outside the window. And then either they will open the window and I can communicate with them that way, or I'll put them on speakerphone. As far as the witnesses go, if they have a couple of friends who can act as their witnesses will be inside with them. Or I will bring my witnesses with me, and my witnesses will stand outside the window with me. That's how I've done that for my assisted living folks. Earlier this month, I had a whole slew of clients that needed to have documents executed, and we were all just kind of hanging out waiting to see what happened with the stay-at-home order. So for those clients, what I finally did was I made arrangements for my conference room to be opened on one day. And I just scheduled my clients an hour apart, which gave us enough time to have a client come in, do their signing, and we had protocols in place. Everyone wore masks. We had 6 feet between us. We sanitized all the surfaces, all the pens. Clients could bring their own pens if they wanted. So I was able to do a lot of signings that day. I think I did 8 signings that day. I have also traveled to my clients' homes, but we are very clear in advance about what our protocol is going to be and how we're going to make that happen in a safe way. Again, masks, sanitizing everything, maintaining distance. I also have helped my clients do a do-it-yourself signing. So I will walk them through the legal requirements for, how their documents need to be signed. And so if they have access to, say, a couple neighbors across the street, or maybe a couple friends, because bear in mind, the witness requirements usually require that witnesses cannot be related to you, okay? There are stringent requirements about who can act as your witnesses. So I'll basically walk my clients through those rules, make sure that they have someone who can act as their witness, and then I will prepare the hard copy documents for them. I get them all like tabbed and color coded, so everybody has a color coded place where they're supposed to sign. And then I priority mail the documents to my clients, and they basically take care of signing on their own. So that's how I've been doing COVID-19 signings with my clients. Basically, doing your estate planning in COVID-19 is just kind of like doing everything else in COVID-19, and that is we have to get creative, and it takes a little bit more work, but we make it work. I think that's it, and I didn't set my timer. I promised I was going to set my timer, and I don't know. I don't think we have time for common questions, do we, Ben? I just stuck that slide in at the end just in case I had extra time, and I don't think I do.
Why don't we save them toward the end? And we
Yeah,
figure-
let's do that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, Heather. Now we're gonna switch over to our friend Linda Melton. Linda, if you'll go ahead and get on video, we'd love to have you here. Give me a second. All right, there you go, Linda. Go ahead.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, great.
Okay, we're going to talk about advanced care planning. This is the healthcare part of it. And we're going to be using Honoring Choices, which is the system that the state of Washington's hospitals and other healthcare agents are using to complete the advanced care planning. And I'm a facilitator for Honoring Choices through the End of Life Coalition, which is part of Friends of Hospice. Okay, next slide. So we'll start with the statistics because everybody likes the numbers. So 90% of the people say that they want to talk about end of life care, but actually only 32% have done so. And this is up a little bit from just a few years ago, so we are making some progress. 97% of people say if they're really ill, they want to talk about end of life care with their doctor, but only 18% have actually done so. And 82% of people say they've got to put their wishes in writing. Only 37% have actually done it. So if you don't have these documents in place, 85% less chance of your wishes being honored. Next. So your durable power of attorney is, first of all, you have to select an agent. And this is someone that can carry out your wishes. Now this can be your spouse, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a family member or it could be a friend. It could be anyone you choose. They just have to agree that they will be your agent and follow your wishes. And your agent will act in your behalf only if you can't make your own decisions. If you're still lucid and can make your decisions, you're still in charge. Again, like Heather was talking about, we need 2 witnesses. They have to be unrelated, not your healthcare provider or your doctor, or have the information notarized. Next. What happens if you have not selected an agent? This can get extremely tricky. So there's a House bill that passed last year that has added a few people. So you can see at the chart at the right. So you can have a guardian appointed if you don't have advanced care directives. We can name someone else, usually a spouse or a domestic partner, or adult children, parents, siblings, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, aunts and uncles, and friends. But if you see those little things that are starred, that means everyone has to agree 100% what's going to happen. So if you have adult children that are going to make a decision for your health, and you have 4 children, they all have to make the same decisions. And how often do you think that's going to happen? Not very often. So it's just keep in mind that the importance of having your advanced care directives, because if you try to get all of your children to make a decision, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to end up with a guardianship, which is going to take extra time and money. Okay, next slide. So naming a healthcare agent. This has to be someone that will make the decisions for you with your wishes. They have to be consistent with state laws. You have to have a form stating, do you want CPR, breathing machines, tube feedings, anything like that. They can make the decision about your treatments and your surgeries, about releasing your medical records, your HIPAA information, and what medical treatments that you want, and then to interpret your instructions and your decisions that you have placed in your plan. So you need to go over this very carefully with them. Next slide. So what matters most to you? Do we have a next? There we go. What matters most to you? So you want to think about what's a good day mean to you? And that might mean, can I take care of myself? Can I give myself a bath? Can I feed myself? Can I make my own decisions? Do I want to see maybe a grandchild married? Can I physically do the things that I really want and love to do? Okay, next slide. So if you're dying, would you like to be at home if you have proper care, or do you want to be in a hospital or a nursing skilled facility, or maybe something else? Maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe you want to be in a cabin in the woods, or renting a cabin at the beach someplace else. You also want to consider what are your personal beliefs, your religious, your spiritual beliefs, what goals you want at the outcome. Okay, your wishes. So think of this. You're in a sudden car accident. You cannot speak for yourself and you don't know anything that's going on. This is where your healthcare agent's going to step in. They're going to make the decisions for you based on your wishes. So do you want to continue your medical treatment to keep yourself alive if there's a chance of you getting better? Or if they say, no, they're going to be in a vegetative state the rest of your life, now what? So you may want to stop all treatments and continue on with a natural death. Or do I just want my healthcare agent to make the decision for me? And that's kind of a tough thing to do, but they can do it if they're listed as your healthcare agent. Okay, next slide. So CPR. CPR, I'm sure you've watched all of the television shows on the medical emergencies, and they just hit hard a couple times and you're just back to normal. That's not how it works in real life. If your breathing stops or your heart stops, what do you want to happen? You have to think in advance, is this injury going to make me all better again? Can I be cured? Or if I'm going to be dying? If there's a little chance that my heart won't even come back, and what happens after that? Or you can say, I don't want any CPR attempted at all. And that's perfectly okay. Some of the statistics, CPR only works about 17% of the time. And on the older people, the elderly and frail, you can do CPR and you can crack a rib, which can then puncture a lung. So you're not in very good condition, even with CPR. Okay, next slide. So what do we do? How do we start the conversation with our potential agents? You could say something like, well, this happened to my sister and I started thinking about it and this is what I want to do. Do you think you could be my healthcare agent? Even though I'm okay right now, I'm kind of worried about what will happen in the future. There's a lot of heart disease in my family and I want to be prepared. So there's lots of ways you can start the conversation, and these are just a few of the little question starters. Go ahead. So what is a healthcare directive? So this is something that says to your physician, should you start and continue treatment, or should you discontinue treatment at all? So if you have a terminal condition and you already know that you're probably not going to make it, you want this agent to be able to make that decision for you. And what is life-sustaining treatment? This is when you might have to go on a respirator. You might have to have artificial tube feeding. Lots of different things. Might have to have some kind of medicines or treatments that will maybe just ease your pain, but they're not considered life-sustaining treatments. This would be considered comfort care if you're on hospice. So things that, medications and things that will just keep you comfortable. Okay, next slide. This is a little bit more on POLST. You can see the picture on the right. In Washington, it's bright green. In Oregon, I think it's bright pink. Idaho is bright orange. So this is a two-sided document that you complete with your physician, and it lists details on what you want. This is something, as Heather was stating, that you should put up on your refrigerator. And it also has a section in there on do not attempt resuscitation or CPR. So you have choices. And there's also places where you can write in things like, I might want CPR, but only for 20 minutes. or you might try to revive me, but only for 2 hours, things like that. These are effective across all the home settings, hospitals, facilities, any place. It's recommended that people over 65, or maybe it's 50 now, that has a pulse, or if you have a terminal condition. More. So CPR, so you can choose CPR to have resuscitation or do not. Do you want medical interventions, full treatments, maybe try some things, or just focus on comfort care? And you can see in that picture back there, that's typical hospital, everything is set up. You've got machines breathing for you and feeding you and everything else. And some people don't want that at all. Okay, next slide. So do you want antibiotics used to prolong your life, or do you not want any? Do you want tube feedings? And this could be the tube feedings that go through the nose or through the stomach, the picture on the right. These might be permanent. They might be temporary. Okay. So these documents are completed. Once you have the packet of information completed, what do you do with it? So you should keep a copy for yourself. You should give one to your agent. You should give one to your attorney. And now we can file them with our hospitals. So if you have, say, Legacy Health, you can just take the document to Legacy and say, would you please put this in my medical file? And this is transferable among different hospitals through a software program called Care Anywhere. So if you're at Legacy and your directive is at Peace Health, they will still have access to it. So you should also keep these original documents with somebody you trust, and do not put it in your safety deposit box, because that's not going to do anybody any good if we can't get to the information that we need. And how often should we look over these documents again? So you want to check them every so often, using the 5 Ds, every 10 years. If your healthcare agent has passed away, you need to assign somebody new. If you've gotten a divorce and maybe your spouse was your agent. If you have a new diagnosis, say that you're happy and healthy and all of a sudden you have COPD and congestive heart failure. So it's time to look at your documents again and make some new decisions. Same if you have a decline of a current healthcare condition. So once you complete these documents, you can share them with your family, and these documents should be considered a gift, because there's too many times that there's an accident or something that happens. The patient goes into the hospital and there's no one to make decisions. The doctors have to try to do everything they can to save your life, whether you want that or not. So this is a gift to you and your family, so they know exactly what you want as a patient who may be incapacitated. These are some resources. So the Life Transitions End of Life Coalition does classes and seminars and educational meetings all the time. We can do it at a group level. We can do it on an individual level. Honoring Choices of Pacific Northwest does the same thing. And we can do presentations anytime, anywhere. Just give us a call. So all of these websites are listed below. So you're welcome to give us a call and we can help you through completing the documents or doing a class. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much, Linda and Heather. Do we have any questions from our participants today? Feel free to raise your hand so we can call on you, or go ahead and put it in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll try to get some answers for you. Any questions today?
Benjamin, there was one question from John Chapman. Is a pulse necessary if any other healthcare directives already spell out my wishes?
I'll take that one. As long as you're healthy and you have an advanced directive in place, you really shouldn't need a pulse. A POLST, like Linda was saying, really is for people who are frail, who are, who have a significant health condition. And it's initiated by your doctor. So yeah, as long as you have an advanced health directive in place that spells out your wishes, you should not need a POLST.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else? You seeing anything on Facebook Live, Christina or Debbie? Any questions there? No, great. All right. Well, oh, we have a hand up. Let me see here. Hold on a second. Terry, I'm just unmuted you. You're welcome to talk. What's your question, Terry? Terry, are you there?
I think she's still muted. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Go ahead, Terry.
I was wondering about the healthcare power of attorney. Could like my mother-in-law write that out handwritten and then have it witnessed by 2 or 3 people? Does that work, or does she have to go through an attorney for that?
I'll give you what I think, and then Linda can speak to that. A healthcare, I think it's a really good question, actually. The healthcare power of attorney is a document that's governed by state statute. So the state basically has said in their law, we really want people to execute these healthcare power of attorney documents. This is how you do it. These are the requirements. And if I would have to look up the statute, but if I remember right, it says something like, this is a suggested format for what a healthcare power of attorney should look like. It doesn't mean that it has to look like that. Now, as far as whether, like if your mom were to just handwrite something and then have it witnessed by 2 people, it actually, that theoretically could end up becoming one of those like law school textbook examples. But I say that depending on, usually they become the law school textbook examples if there are people who don't agree with it, or there becomes a problem. Like if you go to a hospital and a hospital is like, oh, we don't know about this. Like I don't think we're going to accept this. Or there are a couple of kids who they're like, well, I think I should have been appointed as the agent, not her. That's usually when we run into problems with documents like that. I mean, my instinctive response to that would be, it's probably a safer approach to find a document that is aligned with the Washington statutory document and use that. But in a pinch, as long as everybody was on board, it would probably be okay. But the thing is, that's the kind of thing that you don't want to take chances with, right? Because like it's something that you can't go back and fix once you're incapacitated. Linda, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, Honoring Choices provides a complete packet of information, including forms, and they're super simple. They're fill in the blanks and check the boxes. And once it's completed, it's notarized or witnessed, and that can be your durable power of attorney for healthcare information.
Okay. And what was the name of that again?
Honoring Choices.
Honoring Choices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's used all across the state of Washington.
Okay.
Debbie, I think, Debbie, you're going to be emailing that resource out after this to everybody who's on the call. Is that right? Yes. Debbie says yes.
So a follow-up.
Get it in your email, Terry.
A follow-up would be, she is out of state in Nevada, and does most states have the same procedures and same power of attorney type of stuff? What Washington says here would probably be the same as Nevada, basically.
It's basically the same information, yes.
Okay. All right.
I mean, my experience has been that, yeah, they vary a little bit, but they're typically capturing the same information.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Bill has a question for Heather. He writes, does Heather help with Medicaid situations, present or future? And can Heather provide an example of a trust that helps in those specific situations?
So I do not do Medicaid planning. That's a pretty highly specialized area of law. There are a couple of attorneys in Clark County that do Medicaid planning, and if you want their information, I can pass that on to you. As far as can I provide an example of a trust that helps in those situations? Yeah, actually, it's kind of a big deal. Like if you were to pass away and you are giving your assets to your niece or your nephew, and let's say that they are receiving Medicaid, okay? It's a huge benefit, as we know. If that niece or nephew were to suddenly receive this inheritance, they would be potentially disqualified from receiving Medicaid. So it's important when we set up trusts. There are special trusts called special needs trusts that you can set up that will protect that money that has been given, that you're giving to someone or that someone is receiving, so that it basically houses that money in a way that does not jeopardize their Medicaid eligibility.
Great, thank you, Heather. Debbie, can you unmute yourself for a second? Is there anything else you wanted to share before our time comes to a close? We're about at 2:30. Feel free to, you want to finish us off by telling us a little bit about the Senior Hero Awards and any other announcements?
Yeah, so as you know, we weren't able to hold the Senior Heroes Award luncheon on May 21st, but we are still opening up the nominations through June 1st. So we have 8 different awards. I know you can't see this, but if you go to seniораwards.org, you can nominate, I don't know what, I just lost you.
I was going to put up the slide for you. Sorry about that.
Okay. So you can nominate up to, there's 8 awards. You can nominate as many as you want in every different category. We have the Pat Gelada Leadership Award. That's a Lifetime Achievement Award. We have 2 awards for senior focused organizations. That's one nonprofit, one for-profit. We have a Community Hero Award, and that can be a caregiver, you know, family caregiver. Senior Champion Award, that can also be a caregiver, or you know, in the case managers, guardians, fiduciaries, someone like Heather. And then we have 2 awards in the Caregivers of the Year, and those are more specific to home care, assisted living, senior living communities, hospitals. So we extended, because we couldn't have the ceremony, we extended it, you know, to June 1st to enable people to nominate. And please go to that website. You have a few days left. Please go and nominate these deserving heroes in our community, and we're going to continue on with the awards, and we're just so excited to be able to honor them. And it's going to be to be announced when the actual award ceremony will be, either later this year or next year. But so please support us and go to seniораwards.org and nominate today. Did you all hear that? Okay.
Yep, we're good.
I can't see you. Okay. I think Benjamin had to log off. So thank you everyone for your participation. Heather Norton, Linda Melton, we really appreciate you. And with that, we'll just go ahead and sign off. And if you want to rewatch this, it's live, but there will be a recording of it. So you can always log on to that, and we'll send out the slides and information to all the participants and everyone else who's part of the Loving Them Forward community.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.